When Cisco redesigned the CCNP certification to be 3 exams, route, switch, and T-shoot, they didn't do so just to kind of change things up. Kind of like, hey, it's been kind of the same way for a number of years. Let's make it different. Let's do 3 exams. They did so with a very specific purpose in mind. They actually interviewed a lot of their customers and got a bunch of feedbacks, and the customers' feedback was pretty constant in that CCNPs were always seen as configuration wizards. They know what they're doing. There's not a doubt that if you hire a CCNP, it is not somebody who really just kind of passed the exam, doesn't really know what they're doing. So they said, Cisco, you've passed with flying colors on that aspect. You've produced configuration wizards. But the big problem is the CCNPs and even some of the CCIEs that are being produced don't walk out with a big picture in mind. Meaning, you grab a CCNP when things are on fire. Network's down. We need a quick solution. Can bring in the CCNP. Let's have them fix it. But a lot of the CCNPs were seen as, well, that's really your role. You put out fires, you implement new features, but you aren't really the planner and the documenter of the network. And you talk to even the CCNPs. Matter of fact, I'll throw myself under the bus. You talk to me, I would say, well, that's not really what I do. Or I might spin it in the sense of, well, I can do that, but it's not really what I'm good at. There's people that are really good at planning and documentation. And I'm telling you that those are the people you want to get with. And Cisco heard that, from their customers, and they said that's got to change. That's not a viable solution for a business to just put out fires constantly. So this is the major theme. When the new CCNP emerged, we now see a huge slant to everything towards network design and documentation. Now, I know when some of you hear that we're all moving in this direction of planning and design, the initial reaction is like, that's not what I want. Matter of fact, you might have even come to this nugget last in the series and been like, yeah, I'll skip that nugget on design and planning until the very end because it doesn't sound exciting. And that's because you're probably like me. We're more like Bill. And this Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, it could have very well been called Jeremy and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I'm on a journey to become Ted. Bill identifies a need and then implements a solution. It's simple. It's very simple like that. Somebody calls me and says, hey, Jeremy, the internet connection's down. Immediately, my mind's working. I'm saying, okay, have you contacted the service provider? Do they have any outages reported? Check out the Cisco router or the ASA firewall. Is all the lights look normal? Do you have console access? Do a show IP interface brief. What's the status? My mind is immediately going through all these solutions to the problem. And when I find one, I go, great, your problem solved. How do you feel? You feel great? I feel great. Good. Thanks. Call again. Have a nice day. That's the Bill solution. That's the Bill approach to the problem. And first thing I will say is there is a place and there is a time for Bill. You got to pull Bill out of the closet every now and then when crisis hits. Business is down. You got to bring the business up as fast as you can. However, if you would have started off in the direction of Ted, the business may have never gone down in the first place. Here's what I mean, and we all hesitate to admit this. First off, I love this picture of Ted. Look at Ted. Ted, just from that sketch, you can tell he's kind of been there, done that. He's got a few battle scars from his days as Bill before he became Ted. Those kind of wrinkles going across his face. But look at him now. Doesn't the guy doesn't he just look content and happy? But he's the guy that you would go to be like, hey, Ted, I'm really trying to figure this out. What do you think? He looks like a guy that you would seriously value his opinion because he does the same thing as Bill to start off. He identifies the need, but before he immediately SSHs to a switch or accesses a router and starts implementing, he stops and he plans. And that's the problem to the Bill-sized personality. Bill wants to immediately solve the issue or implement the new feature. I'm not always talking about putting out fires like something's gone wrong. I'm talking about, you get a brand new Cisco router in. It's like when you're a kid and you get a Nintendo in the box and you're like, oh, I can't wait to get this thing out. You pull it out. You even forget that, under the styrofoam is all the controllers and power cords. And you sit there, you're just like, I've got to implement this. And we often approach Cisco routers the same way. Oh, we got to get this thing installed. Whereas Ted's like, okay, I've got the self-control. I'm leaving it in the box. I'm planning where this Cisco router is going to go. I'm going to have a full config before I even cut the cellophane on the Cisco router. Now, when I hear that, when I think with that mindset, I'm like, that's painful. I love the smell of new cellophane. But he's already got the whole plan. He's got everything documented in a project plan format. He implements the solution. And then, this is where he goes further than Bill, he then documents what he did. Now, I will say, it's an easy thing to see Bill and Ted and to play it off as a personality characteristic. I've done it many times. Here, try some of these on for size. That's just not how I am. I'm more of a spontaneous person. That's just always been my personality. I've always liked surprises and like, wow, whoa, what am I gonna do next? Oh, let's kind of see how it goes. And then I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, this isn't sounding too good for a business. I'm like, wait, no, I'm a troubleshooter. That's what I am. I'm a troubleshooter. You pull me out. If something's wrong, I will fix it in a snap of a fingers. That's what I'm more of a troubleshooter than I am a planner. And what I will say is yes, there is a place for troubleshooters. Absolutely. I've done a lot of it myself. But Cisco's coming back and saying, you know what? A lot of your troubleshooting skills, as necessary as they are, may not be necessary as frequent if you would have planned it all out in the first place. And I hear things like that. I'm like, they're right. I don't know how many times I've been out on a customer site and it hits me. I'm like, Jeremy, when will you learn? When will you think about these things? Did I mention this a moment ago? I was just recently upgrading a Catalyst 4000 series chassis to a 4500 series chassis, and I did a quick scan online. I'm like, some modules are compatible. 4000 modules work in 4500. Should be a quick switcheroo, no problem, right? Well, yeah, this is their core switch of the entire network, and they only have one. They don't have enough money for a redundant setup. So we pull out all the blades, total network outage when we do this, put in the 4500 series chassis, put in all the blades. We're like, okay, let's boot it up. I boot it up with a console connection, and it comes back and it says, I'm sorry, the iOS that you're running is not compatible with this 4500 series chassis. Yeah, that's about what it sounded like. Silence. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, are you kidding me? That's about where that thought comes in my mind. Jeremy, when will you learn to think these things through to the end before you do them? And because I've taken down the whole internet. I know some of you are like, well, just download the new iOS. It's not too hard. Well, it is when you've taken down the whole network and you have to go find a DSL connection. And it was actually, where was I? They had a backup DSL connection in a waste management facility, literally where they're processing wastewater. So there I am, barely able to breathe, standing on a chair with a network cable plugged into a DSL box. And I'm downloading a new iOS, and again, the thought constantly going through my when will I think this through? That's what I'm talking about. It's not so much a personality characteristic as it is, dare I say, a level of maturity. It's kind of like something you have to grow into and realize, you know what? There's something to this whole planning and design thing. So Cisco's goal when they're talking about planning and design is not to say, here is the model for planning and design. You must use this that's not it. They will tell you right up front, we are not pushing a model on you. We have a model. You can see it right there. It's the PPDIOO, which let me drag this over. This is it. PPDIO. Prepare, plan, design, implement, operate, and optimize. And matter of fact, I opened another tab to Cisco's website. This is it. They have, under each one of these things, kind of a list of everything that you want to do. And when you're preparing, you want to say, okay, what is the business requirement that we're doing? What is technology strategy are we developing? You can go through each one of these, and as you go through and say, okay, plan, we are planning. These are the different areas that we need to plan, design, and so on. And so what they're saying is, we've got an outline. We've created a structure for you to plan out networks, and we suggest you use it. However, we realize that this is not for everybody. It may be over complex. It may not be complex enough. I mean, if you look right here, there's ITIL, IT Infrastructure Library. That is a whole certification in itself. I mean, literally with months and months and months of study and exam just on planning and how to best do this. I will say, when I say find a template that works for you, let me show you my template. This is something actually my wife created for me in Excel. I'm so blessed to be married to this woman. It's funny, when we got married, we actually did premarital counseling. I know that sounds funny, but it's kind of one of those things, make sure everything's okay and on the up and up before you tie the knot. And one of the biggest things that they found, they said, man, you are really a planner, to my wife. And they looked at me, they go, you really are not. This can be a major area of conflict for you. And it's funny, she is actually a facilitator. well, I should say she was, when we first got married, a facilitator for Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, time management, and how to do that. Matter of fact, I'm turning around, I'm looking at my wall of my office, and she has on poster board size paper this time management matrix showing the 4 quadrants. And every now and then we get into a discussion, and she's like, what quadrant are you in right now? I'm like, and I have to look, because I always forget. I'm like, I'm quadrant 1 right now, urgent and important. Everything's urgent and important to me. And so she created this project plan, which works beautifully for anything. It's so simple. All I have to do is come in here and say, okay, project XYZ. Let's say this is my Catalyst 4000 upgrade. And I come in here, and of course we have cells the whole way down, and I would say, okay, the major heading is going to be, first off, I need to research Cat 4000 upgrade. So this is my major step. And then underneath are my minor steps. And it's funny, I'm telling you this, I'm kind of like, and this is so cool, this is what I do. I go through and I say, okay, my minor step is going to be, I need to check hardware module compatibility. Check, and this would have saved me, software iOS compatibility. And just kind of go down this list. And you see, my next major category is going to be, drive on, well, that's not really a major category. We'll say perform physical upgrade. 1, get strong people to move chassis, because that's not me. I would go down, and I would keep making this list of all these things, and you can see right next to it I have assigned to. In this case it's very simple. Jeremy. Keep going down this list. When am I going to complete it by? What's the current status? What are my notes? If I come into a hardware, I've got to research, the 48 port inline power blade a little bit more. I would put it in the notes and all that. Just something that I can plan and keep structure by, so that when I'm in there and things aren't going right, I look back and I'm like, did I think of this? Have I planned for this? And all of these things, kind of thinking about every angle. This is the kind of thing that Cisco wants you to do before you actually get into the situation of, everything's down kind of situation. So from that, you create your implementation plan, and then, I know it sounds funny, follow the implementation plan, meaning have a printout of it right there. It's no good if you just create it and then wing it when you get there. You have to go through and go step by step with what you planned as the best practice to do it. Now, one of the biggest hurdles to planning beyond the personality side, let's say the personality is committed. You said, okay, I'm going to be a planner, turning over a new leaf. Okay, I've come to my first project. I'm planning. I'm pulling out a piece of paper. Pull it out, and you're like, I haven't written on paper in years. Everything's been digital for me. Okay, I've got this pen thing. I'm going to draw a circle. There's a router. I mean, you kind of get lost. You're like, what do I do? 3 basic phases of planning. Again, and that's why Cisco's created those models like we saw previously. But those can be a little big for some projects. So again, 3 basic phases. Number 1, figure out the necessary information and data. For example, and these are all examples, accurate network diagram. Have a list of the equipment, meaning hardware models, SmartNet expiration dates if you have SmartNet on them. A list of all the modules inside of the routers and the switches that are out there. Have an IP address diagram or spreadsheet. A lot of times you just can't fit all of the subnets on a Visio diagram, so just create an Excel spreadsheet showing where everything is. And there's a lot of automated utilities out there that track your IP addresses and show what's active and things like that. And those are great. I applaud them. I think SolarWinds has some great stuff like that. There's plenty of other ones out there. But one thing I will say is there's just nothing that beats the static documentation, because you don't want documentation that's changing on you, and then you think, well, what was it? And a lot of the automated systems, they track changes, which are great. You need that, but just having a static Excel spreadsheet of the IP addresses is huge. Link utilization, understanding what bandwidth amounts are being used on the links. The configuration commands, or I'll say general syntax that you'll be using for whatever upgrade or change you're planning on doing. A timeline. What kind of deadlines do you have for each one of the items in the list? Like my project plan, you could see that. Hang on, let me bring it back up there. My project plan, I always have a complete by to say when is this due? When is the deadline for when I should have checked the hardware and iOS compatibility with the system? Hopefully it's before I'm standing in front of that switch on implementation day. So timeline for that. Hardware required for the upgrade. Relevant contact information, like having a list of phone numbers before you're there and saying, does anybody have the phone number for Cisco TAC or something? Have that list of phone numbers right there for the local service provider, for the consultants that you have. All of that's the data that you would need to plan. Then you move into your implementation plan. And this is where you are actually doing the implementation. You're, number one, identifying your device and task list. And this is your checklist. Now, again, and this is something, again, my wife has taught me a lot about. Don't get so detailed that it just becomes silly. Meaning, there's a difference between project planning and planning like this, where I say, okay, it's time to let's say upgrade cat to 4500 config. Okay, this is what I would consider silly planning. One, plug in console cable. Two, open terminal program. Do you see what I mean? I mean, sure, you might feel good for a little while saying, okay, status complete. Woohoo, I have opened my terminal program. But you're not going to do that. I mean, instead, these are tasks. They should have mini steps underneath each one of them that you, using your spontaneous, intuitive nature and everything that we love best is, I need to go in and reassign VLAN, we'll say management VLAN IP address. Enter. Now, underneath that would include, okay, I've got to remove the old management IP address, I've got to plug in my console cable, open my terminal program, type in the right passwords, all of that kind of stuff. But these are tasks, essentially, and again, I feel like I'm teaching you everything my wife taught me yesterday kind of thing. These are tasks that should be delegatable. You should be able to delegate these to somebody else that knows what they're doing, and they would be able to take that and go, okay, I know what you mean by that. Let me go do that. And they kind of find their best way to do that. You don't list every single step in that. So when you're seeing right here, list devices and tasks. Again, tasks should be delegatable tasks, checklists that you can check, not silly steps. Things like the necessary software version. You can see that was near and dear to my heart when I made that. A list of the configurations that you'll need. And this gets into pre-planning. Pre-plan your configurations. Don't just get there and then say, okay, well, let's figure it out. You should already have in Notepad or something like that a complete configuration outline of what you're planning on doing on that device. Here's the commands I would type in. And then if one of them doesn't work because who knows why, that's where you have a little on-the-fly spontaneity of troubleshooting, and then you document it. And then finally, verification and testing. Once you implement this, what are the steps necessary to verify and test this? Ping some public IP addresses, ensure DNS is working, test to make sure the access list is blocking this type of traffic. It's all, how do I ensure that what I've done has either resolved the issue or implemented the new feature? That brings us to the final phase of planning, and this is the postmortem, documentation. Everybody's favorite, right? But this is actually one of the most important pieces, is to document everything that goes on. Again, Cisco is not about saying, here's the documentation template that we want you to use. You can create your own. There's a million documentation templates out there for documenting network diagrams and all that. And that's some of my favorite times. I love going on Google and just saying, network diagram best practices, and finding all the different ways that people have created network diagrams. And that's a great way. That's great information, all that. And you can see right here, here's the things that are included. Network diagram information, network equipment, current configurations that are in place on the devices. And you might have an automated system that's monitoring that, like Kiwi Cat Tools or SolarWinds or something like that, that's pulling those configurations every so often. But again, having a current config is always good. Any known issues, if there's anything going on. What is the baseline? What kind of performance are we getting at this current state when everything is running? So that way you can find out if there's skews later on. What are the verification commands that I typed in, and what were the results of those? So if down the road someone's troubleshooting and they do a show IP route and 5 routes are missing that were there, they can then go, oh, okay, it looks like we're missing some routes in the network. What are the monitoring and management utilities that you're using to do this? Again, create a package for yourself as if you were passing on this network to somebody else. That's the best way to think about it. Imagine that you were a consultant for your own network and you wanted to pass on all this information to the on-staff admin so that they could monitor and maintain their own network. If they don't know that PRTG is monitoring all of the different link utilizations around the network, they don't even know the tool exists, then it's going to be worthless when it's said and done. And then finally, and I know this sounds funny, but photographs and screen caps. I was actually working at a data center recently, and someone sent me a picture of the Cisco configuration, all the racks and how everything was cabled and set up. I was like, that is really helpful. Really helpful to see physically how everything looks, how everything is configured there, or at least plugged in and wired and that kind of thing. If nothing more, it helped me go, okay, that's the devices and that's how they're connected, and it helped me put relevance to a lot of the obscure network diagrams that I was looking at. So now a lot of times in my Visio diagrams, I put a little picture in the lower right-hand corner of what that area of the network looks like, if it's applicable. Obviously, if it's connected by WAN links and things like that, you can't get pictures of everything, but it really helps. Finally, documentation must become who you are. It's not a one-time event. It's not something that you can create and then someday refer back to when things have gone wrong after the network's been upgraded 3 times. It's like a depreciating asset. It's like a car. You know, when you first create the documents, they're super valuable. But as time goes on, if you're not managing and maintaining those documents, you're going to open it up 3 years later, and it's going to lead you down 5 wrong turns before you get to where you're looking to go. It's got to become, okay, we made a change, let's update the documents. Oh, we've added a piece of equipment, let's update the documents. That, you know, it's part of a constant, ongoing basis of how you run your network environment. So when it comes to network design and documentation and planning, we are all in the same boat. I'm assuming, unless you guys are superstars, type A personalities, you've documented everything to the T. You're like, this is old news. I've become Ted long ago. I'll say for those of us who are on a journey to become Ted, this is the process that we have to go through. This is the structure that we have to put into every network job that we're working on. And as you look at the new CCNP exams, Cisco is really wanting you to follow this, and in the sense that they will throw questions at you on the exam that they know you'll have to document. You know, the scenarios are too complex. You've got to pull out what your objectives are, document, okay, this has to come first, this has to come second. I'm telling you, I've been very impressed with how their simulations have evolved. They're, you know, very much a complex scenario now instead of a pre-bulleted list of objectives that you have to accomplish. You now have to plan and you have to document because they want this to be just like the real world. So it has to become really who you are to correctly do this, not only in the real world, but also even now in the certification exam environment. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.